Most investors think that borrowers stop paying because they just don't want to. The fact is, there's a lot of reasons why they stop paying. Find out what they are and how you can handle them as the investor next on the Paperstac Podcast. Welcome back to the Paperstac Podcast. A couple of new faces in here today. You guys are seeing different faces, different times. We've got a TJ back in. Rick Allen, Brett Burky here, bringing you some knowledge bombs. How's it going, man?
Good. Yeah, just enjoying the nice weather here in Florida at 900 degrees. My air conditioner just kind of went out. Need to get some Freon. My wife's at home with a portable fan sitting there in the kitchen.
Oh, dude, it's so hot.
I called her and said, the guy's on his way. And she's like, well, how much is it? I'm like, does it really freaking matter how much it is?
Right? It doesn't. It's so interesting.
It doesn't matter. You're going to negotiate when there's water in the kitchen, like everything. So, like, it doesn't matter.
It's just so hot right now. And it's interesting. Like right now, the World Cup's going on. And there's obviously people from across the world coming to the United States. And like, I've just, on social media, a lot of the stuff I hear is like, no, it's hot here. It's like, hot. It is extremely warm. And it's just that time of year here. So anyways.
Yeah, so today's episode is something that's very interesting. And it's a very nuanced subject because there are some typical things that can happen and reasons why borrowers stop paying. And we're going to cover the ones that sound like the most normal ones, but there's always those outliers. So that's what people want to know, is because when they're doing their due diligence, these are things that you just sometimes can't predict for. You don't know how someone's life moments are. You might know enough about the note, but these are just some of the reasons why they might stop paying and just things to keep in mind.
I think there's a couple things we can unpack and look at. One of them is like, okay, I'm looking at buying a loan that's a non-performing loan, and I'm going to read through the servicing notes. I'm going to try to understand the reason for them not paying. And that will often tell you, am I going to have to go straight through foreclosure on this? Maybe they want to keep the house. And there's an opportunity there to work for them, but you got to learn the story. Or like I've told this story before, how I saw that they didn't want the house anymore. They had moved out of the house. They were ready to sign the house over. And the lawyer that was involved was just a jerk and didn't like him, so they stopped talking to him.
Oh, yeah.
So you can learn a lot from it. But also then, if you already own a note that's performing and then they stop paying, really getting to the bottom of the reason why will help you understand the way forward. Yeah,
it's funny you say that because I'm actually, just now as soon as you said that, I realized I had one that stopped paying and they came back. They started paying. They got caught up and they paid all the
past due stuff.
Past due plus all the servicing stuff. They're, they even covered the door knock. And I was like, all right. So, but they also wanted to talk. And I was like, okay, well, tell them to text me first. I don't know their number, So, but I haven't got to that part.
No, but that's the biggest thing, is understanding why. And
yeah, what I'm saying is I don't know why.
There's different ways you can handle it depending where you are in your note journey, right? If you have, as far as how many loans you have, one of the reasons with the banks is, or one of the things with an institutional investor, it's like, look, they've got 40, 50, 100,000 on loans. You're a number.
Oh yeah.
If you're investing with your self-direct retirement account, you're a smaller mom and pop investor or something like that, you may have 20 loans. You've got more bandwidth, you've got more time, and every loan that you can keep performing is you're like, hey, I really want to keep this performing. I don't want to go, I'm invested in this heavily. I want to make sure that we get this working again. So it helps to understand the reason why. So no surprise. What's the number one reason on the list?
Death?
Nope.
Divorce?
No. Loss of job, loss of income, right? They simply just can't afford, they can't afford it right now. Like, right? One thing that I know is universal is life happens.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have borrowers who, they lose a job, the economy's rocky, it comes down to where they're like, well, I got to put new tires on my car, or they got to make decisions on, maybe it's I got to put food on my table versus I got to pay my mortgage. And you hope people don't get in that situation, but the reality is loss of income is one of those things, is that people are going to lose their jobs.
Yeah.
Especially like, look, right now and moving forward, I don't know what the projections actually are, regardless of the economy, with the role that AI is starting to play.
Oh,
There's people going to lose their jobs.
yeah.
I mean, jobs are being replaced. It seems almost daily. You look at some of the stuff that's going on, and you see that it's like people are going to lose their jobs. So you gotta understand that that's something that's going to happen, and understanding like, look, what job do they come from? So if it's a real estate agent or something like that, the market got a little soft. Hey, I don't know that person is going to be able to bounce right back.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they will. Maybe they have something else they can do. If there was just somebody who's working for a company that went out of business, downsizing, they're changing, hey, maybe there's a chance they get back. But the important thing is knowing it, getting an idea of what's the next steps with that borrower. So that's something that's pretty.
That's an interesting one too, because you think about it. Some of these notes that you buy are usually a lot of times they can be in small towns, and sometimes that small town has one factory that makes up a town. Without that factory, everything goes. The person that was supplying the supplies to the guy at the factory, and people that were the mechanics. So that's happened in that one location we were looking at.
Detroit?
Well, Detroit's one of them. I was going to say that place in Alabama where the factory just is gone. And now what do? You can't, not their fault. It's not like they did something wrong at work. It's gone. And
yeah, so it limits buyers too. It erased buyers. So
yeah, those are tough ones. That's a tough one of losing the job.
This is a job. That one's difficult. And, you could talk to them. You can figure it out. What are they doing? Look at the house. If the house is being maintained, emotional equity, there's probably a good chance to move forward. Tell me about what happened. Do you have any idea what happened?
The one in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't taken her phone call yet. But I mean, I want to, because it didn't make any sense. The house is valued at $160. I think they owed like $9,000 left, and they've had it for. I'm like, just why would you do it? That's the thing that didn't make sense to me. Come to find out, they weren't even in the house. Somebody else is renting it. It's a weird story, but they said.
Is it a land contract or is it an actual note and mortgage?
No, I think it's I want to say I can't remember.
Contract for deed.
It might be a contract for deed.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Let me look at that paperwork. I'm dealing with some of that stuff right now. Yeah,
it's in Pennsylvania, so that's the only scary part. But then also too, they want to chat. I said, yeah, give them my number. I'll talk to them, see what happened. I want to know myself, but I totally forgot to follow up on that until we just started talking about this conversation. So there will be something for me to do after this.
So that's number one. Number two,
I would say medical issues.
Yes, number two is medical issues. Again, life happens. When it comes to paying medical bills or putting all your money to take care of a loved one, it's like, hey, it's usually a pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's a pretty easy decision. Matter of fact, we had somebody selling a note on the platform who they owned a house, then they owner financed to somebody, and the lender actually was having to sell the note because he got cancer, had to go through chemo, all this other stuff. So really tough situation, but medical is a big one. It's just, and I've seen it happen. I can't tell you how many times that's been the actual thing that happened with loans that we had that turned non-performing was medical. Usually, I say usually, can be the borrower, but can also be the borrower's family members. So
yeah, those are tough because you want to be sure to be as empathetic and work with them as much as you can. And in all these situations, each one of these are all terrible. So I mean, but that's the thing. That's where the good thing with being a smaller fund or having 10 or 20, you really can make money with meaning. You can actually do the right thing by somebody. It's not just about making a dollar, because you can always restructure these later.
You can, but you always got to be careful because they will string you along. And there's some people that they will fall into the category of why did they stop paying. I remember the one that was probably the most dumbfounding me, we bought a non-performing loan, and this is probably 2014, 15, and we're talking with the borrower. What happened? Why'd you stop paying? Mm-hmm. My neighbors weren't paying on their mortgage.
That's a good idea.
So I was like, so what? He's like, so I was like, well, if they're not going to pay, why should I pay? And so it was over in Tampa. And I was like, it didn't make any sense. I was like, why? He's like, I just wasn't going to pay. I was like, well, now you don't have a house. We're going to take your house. He's like, whatever.
What?
Yeah, he was just like, okay. And it was really bizarre, but he hadn't been paying for a long time. We probably bought it in 2014, and he probably hadn't been paying since like 2009.
Oh gosh.
So he's like, whatever, if it was $1,500, you could just, he'd got his $100,000 and just was like happy with it. But it was like, okay, well, you're gonna have to sign the house over, which he did. He ended up signing the house over. That was like,
was the house at least nice? Did he keep it up?
No. Actually, you know what? It wasn't bad. The outside needed some work a little bit, but the inside, he was living in it. And the air conditioner worked. I think the roof was okay, but this was, maybe it was 13 or 14.
This wasn't the one I went to with you to one time.
Was it in Tampa?
It was in Tampa.
Yeah, that one.
The Spanish guy.
Yeah, the Spanish guy.
Oh yeah. He thought I was like your partner or something. What did he think? Like
I don't know.
I was like, what?
Yes, that one. That was the one.
I was like, what kind of partner are you talking about?
I know his name. I can't really say it on here. Miriam would know it. Really,
yeah.
Miriam talked to him a lot. But
yeah.
Anyways, so sometimes you will get people who will not pay because they don't want to pay, and they will string you along, and they'll say they're going to make payments, and they never make payments. Mm-hmm. So, it is good to work with people, but also you kind of have to say, like, look, I'm going to work with you, but we need to have a defined path forward. It can't be we're going to kick this can down the road for 6 months. It's like, hey, look, this is what we're doing. So that's number 2, medical. What do you think number 3 is?
I don't know if it's haven't lost a job. Are we getting worse as we go? I would say
I don't know. Yeah,
divorce.
Yeah, the big D.
I don't know what. All these are terrible. Yeah, all these are terrible. Divorce.
Divorce is no good, and that one can add some complications in there because you're like, well, who's doing what, and if it's messy and neither one of them are paying and neither one of them want to talk to you. So it's and what divorce ultimately leads to is I may get the house from in a divorce, but I lost my wife's income, and now it's like, okay, I have less income to pay for the house, and I got the house, but I got to figure out what I want to do with it. And those are bad situations. So trying to understand them allows you to work a path forward. And, sometimes there's situations where you look at them and you just say, look, we can slice this apple in many different ways we want, but it comes down to it, you don't have enough money to pay for this. So what are we going to do? And those are tough conversations, but you have to have those and be willing to have those conversations with the borrower and say, look, I can't come up with a way that I can justify modify you because we're going to wind up in this same situation. What I can do is I can offer you some cash for keys.
All right.
What I can do is I can work with you to get you set up. And those are the routes that your servicer, obviously, and all this caveat is you kind of are working through your servicer if you're not self-servicing or you're not doing your own loss mitigation, which is something we'll touch on as having a good servicer. You have to be able to, you have to know and look at things. They have to math. The math has to pencil out.
Couple questions, because I haven't really gone through this like you have. Have you ever offered someone, hey, look, if you sell your house, I'll pay for your realtor fees or whatever?
I feel like you're way
I know these. Right now. I feel like these chairs keep sinking.
No. Yeah, no.
They keep sinking down. I
was looking up to Brett, and I'm like, he's asking me for advice. I'm looking up to him.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Pay the realtor fees. What's the demeanor of all these people? Have you ever had people that are irate and crazy, or most people like, I get it, or is it
all of the above, man? You never know.
Really?
You don't know what's going to happen. You have people that they get it. It's like damages people's pride, right? And so understanding that is a big thing, and having a servicer who understands that and is able to look, these people are already in a situation where if they're dealing with loss of job, medical bills, divorce, loss of income, and now they're looking at losing their house, they're probably taking it. You know what I mean? Their pride is getting damaged. It's getting hurt. And so understanding that and coming into those situations of, look, I get it. I have this role of I'm the lender, I'm the bad guy. Let's put together a deal, something that works for everybody here, right? If you have that mindset, you can go in, and usually it works out to where it creates less friction.
I could see that.
But going into it, if you're look, sometimes you just got to go in legally guns a-blazing. It has to happen.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. All right, so let's see here. Job, medical, divorce. I think the only one left is dying.
Death. Yeah. Death. People.
It's hard to negotiate with them.
Yeah, you can't really negotiate with that one. But then you're bringing in probate and all other things. And
how hairy is that get? Do you have to deal with probate because how's that work if you own the note?
You can foreclose them out. I mean, you can just go through the foreclosure process, but you're always still like probate's always there, right? And so it depends what your goal is. If your goal is to get the house back, you just start the foreclosure process. You don't really work with them, but
what if there's heirs? Do they have any rights to it? I mean, if there's going to probate,
yeah, they can go ahead and make the payment. I mean, even if it's a HECM loan, they have the option to pay off the mortgage. Mm-hmm. They can always pay it off, and the house transfers to them. So that's an option.
Interesting.
But you're right; you can't negotiate with dead folks.
No, not without a Ouija board. No, it's
So, yeah, that's it. And I think really like a key to all this is having a servicer who understands your goals, your motivation, how you want to handle everything. And for you as an investor, understanding it, right? Mm-hmm. Like if it's, you always have an A, B, and C plan. If you bought it as a non-performer and you're reading the tea leaves of the payment history and then and the servicing notes and you think you got a path forward, set your path, have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Usually plan C is I'm taking the house back, I'm going through foreclosure. I don't like to wait too long on starting foreclosure. At least get the ball rolling after you have your conversations. If you don't feel like it's going anywhere, give people deadlines. Look, I got to move forward with something. And time is money. I can't sit here and give you 3 months to decide. I'm going to have to start foreclosure.
Wow.
And that just starts racking up fees. So yeah, have the plan. And then if you have one that's performing and goes non-performing, the more you understand about the reason it went non-performing, the easier it is to set your course of action.
Very much so. But even when that does happen, you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can even...
90 days.
90 days.
Yeah, they got to be, before you can file those pendants. Mm-hmm. So...
interesting. So those are the reasons why. Any other reasons why someone would just... I guess this maybe the last one, which is the dumbest one, was that one, my neighbor stopped doing it.
Yeah, that one's, I mean...
Well, if your neighbor jumped off a bridge, would you do it? Is that what you said?
Huh? Yeah, No, I think I actually told him, I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Did you?
Yeah, I was like...
I mean, it is pretty stupid.
I was like, wow. I don't remember, it was a long time ago, but it was like, what? This one where you're like, I think I repeated it. I was like, wait a minute, you stopped paying because your neighbor did. Yeah, what happened to your neighbor? He lost his house. I'm like...
Next up?
Yeah, so...
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was interesting. When I forget we were at Tampa for something, I remember meeting that guy and I was like, this guy is odd. He was very odd.
Yeah. Cabron was his last name.
I don't...
No.
I don't think that was...
LeBron. LeBron.
Yeah, I don't think that was his last name.
Yeah, is that a bad word I just said in Spanish?
I think so, yeah.
Whatever.
We'll put a beep over that.
So, anyways, that's it for this episode of this podcast. If you got anything you want to talk about, happy to do so.
Yeah, we're gonna bring on some guests. I got someone I'm really excited to talk about. That's gonna come on and talk about hypothecation. So we're gonna have someone come on and talk about hypothecation.
Hypothecation.
See, I'm so green on that. I don't even know how to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah.
Hypothecation.
Hypothecation, not hypothecation.
Hypothecation.
All right.
No, I can't say it.
All right, we got to wrap this.
All right.
This is going downhill quick.
Right.
That's it for this edition of the Paperstac Podcast. I'm Rick Allen, Brett Burky. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you.